Hello, I'm Tanya from English Challenges, and welcome to my book club. I'm so excited that you're here. So, the goal with this business book club is to read books together that will improve your English, but will also help you be stronger in the job market, right? Whether it's to find a new job or just to communicate better at your current job. Also, it's just fun. I love reading. Okay, so this month for July, we're reading How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. If you can believe it, this book was written in 1936. 1936, that was forever ago. And since then, it's become one of the world's bestsellers. Let me check here. It sold over 30 million copies in multiple languages. And even though communications is my background, for some reason, I've just never gotten around to reading this book. I'll be honest, I've started it a few times, but I thought it was kind of boring. So, but it keeps making all of the top lists of books to read for communication, for language persuasion. So I thought this would be an amazing opportunity to do it together and see what we can learn from it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is part one. So part one, the takeaway is don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Okay, so my question is, what's something you're going to criticize yourself less about? Because even though this book is about communicating with others, when I was reading these chapters, I felt like I was in therapy. It was so revealing of things that I wasn't doing for myself. And so I thought that's something we're going to do together. We're going to analyze the tips, but we're also going to flip the switch, as we say, and apply it to ourselves as well. Feel free to answer that question and share a little bit about yourself. And just so you know, it's not just you. I'll share personal things too. Okay, so for me, something I'm going to criticize myself less about, I'll be honest, I'm very critical of myself in terms of my business. And as it's been evolving, I'm learning online marketing, I'm learning all these different things, and teaching business English online, not easy, especially the way that I'm trying to diversify the services and things I do. So I'm going to be less critical of myself in terms of my speed of growth. So maybe for you, it's something about business. It could be your language. I find that with my learners, my students, my clients, they're so self-critical about their English that they never realize or take the time to appreciate how much better they are. All right, so you think about that, and let's go ahead and look at some of the points from part one. Okay, so part one, I have some notes here for us. The reason that this is such great advice, number one, I always believe in coming from a point of empathy and positivity. And this book really echoes that same sentiment, so I'm really enjoying it. Also, it's just not effective. When you're criticizing someone, they're more likely to get defensive. When someone's defensive, they're not listening to what you're saying. They're not taking away maybe what your intention was, which is how they can improve. So bottom line is, criticizing is not effective for the purpose of persuasion, of inspiring action. If your purpose is to hurt someone, yeah, it's effective, but that's not what we do here. We're learning how to really handle people, how to manage people, how to, like the title says, how to influence them. It also makes you a better friend. Let me know in the comments if you're learning English for making new friends, or if you're learning it for work, or both. These are things that if you don't complain and criticize about a friend or to a friend, that's a good thing. Friends don't want to be criticized. Okay, something else here. Now, if you're preparing, oh, this is so good. So if you're preparing for an uncomfortable confrontation, an uncomfortable situation, maybe you have to provide feedback to an employee, to a colleague, maybe to a friend, we don't know the situation. If you're coming from a point with a lot of emotional baggage, if there's so many things that you want to criticize, because we'll be real here, there are times where you want to criticize someone. It can feel good for you when you're angry, but it's not an effective way to inspire someone to be better. But if that's in you, you got to get it out. So in the book, in chapter one, it also had similar advice. Write it down or say it out loud, whatever works in a more cathartic way for you. Cathartic means like a release. Write down all the negative things you're thinking, all the things you want to criticize about that person, so you can get it out of your brain space, and then you can refocus into how you can communicate effectively without criticizing. And yes, so Sharif, I see that you're trying not to criticize. It's painful in terms of it's hard if that's been your go-to form of communication. And that's why we're reading this book. We're trying to really analyze how we communicate so that we can improve. All right. So another thing about part one. So I noticed that the book uses a lot of parenting examples. And I think that's a really wonderful way to show that this communication, it's great for business, it's great for friendships, client relationships, but also with children. And I find, and I've done this before, I know some of you know, when you take a parenting example, a lot of things become a lot more clear because we don't have as many judgments with children. And so a lot of things are facilitated and you can understand the theory so that then you can work on the application. So I really enjoyed those. I don't have any kids myself, but I love parenting examples because I think it really simplifies it in a way that you allow yourself to feel empathy for a child more than you do for an adult most times. All right. And see, and on a personal note, okay, we talked about this. Now, if you're going to stop criticizing others, I'm going to flip this around on you, and I'm going to also ask you to stop criticizing yourself. You can want to improve, you can want to grow, you can want to be better. But I'm going to make an effort for myself as well. I've been going through anytime I go through tough times where I'm trying to figure things out, I absolutely, guilty, am very, very critical of myself. And I don't think that's effective, but we've probably all done it. Let me know if you do it too. And if you're very self-critical, I want you to take this chapter to heart. Because if you're going to invest time in changing how you communicate with others, don't you owe that to yourself? You talk to yourself all day long. So I want you to, really, really take this to heart and think of yourself as that other person. Think of yourself as your own friend, and how can you be more effective in terms of how you communicate change for yourself. Yeah, I really enjoyed, I agree with you that the examples showed not just like regular people, but also some big leaders in big industries and how they apply this. And if it can work in these, multinational big corporations, it can work for a small business. It can work for you as an entrepreneur, or it can work for you as a parent. Okay, so part two was give honest and sincere appreciation. If I recall correctly, I had some, and again, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. I had some issues with chapter 2. I'm going to go ahead and say it's because it was written so long ago. I think some of the comments that were made about mental health were very insensitive and outdated. So if you notice that some of those opinions were a bit harsh, as much as they tried to update the book, I think there were some things that were problematic here, but I do think there's value in it. I do understand that this was written in a different time, but I thought it was important. If you took anything personally about mental health, don't, ignore any of the things that don't apply to you. You're wonderful as you are, and we're awesome. So that disclaimer being said, to take away the positive, this was really cool because I think this is the one where we talked about flattery versus appreciation. And this is something I see a lot, even on like comments on social media. Flattery has its time and place. But in terms of building true relationships, in terms of building true connections, flattery falls short. It doesn't have the same impact. So telling someone like, oh, you're pretty, or oh, I like your shoes, or whatever. Let's reserve those for other situations. For here, when you're talking about handling people, managing people, building relationships, appreciation. So before you tell someone, oh, you're so pretty, and I'm only saying that because that's a quick one that people usually go to, think about things that they've done. Maybe like, you know what? I really appreciate that you always text me back when I reach out to you. I really appreciate that, I don't know, let me see, if I were managing a team, because I really appreciate that you always come to work on time. That's part of their job, right? That's part of their requirements. But when you tell someone, I really appreciate you for coming to work on time, even though they should, because it's part of their contractual obligations, as a team leader, you're telling them, I see you. And even though this is a given, I appreciate it. What that tells me as an employee, as a person on that team, is I see that like I'm appreciated, even things that could be taken for granted. that goes a much longer way. Also, it motivates me because then I'm like, ooh, they see me when I come in, so I need to continue, showing up on time. These are things that are so much more effective. It has long lasting impact versus a very simple, I like your shoes, or whatever other, flattery compliment you would want to give. And you know what? This does take some time because it's a lot easier to compliment, to flatter superficial things because it's just, they're more obvious. And a lot of times we've done that more often. And it does take a little more time to share appreciation for someone, but that's what makes it good. That's what makes it so effective, because as the receiver that person really took time to observe your behavior or observe your progress. So it's amazing for team leadership, great for managers, CEOs. Also, I'm sure you can see it from a parenting perspective. That positive reinforcement can be very helpful. For friendships, I think it's also kind of unexpected. I think in friendships, you can take the other person for granted because maybe they've been around a long time, or if they're a new friend, you keep it superficial. So this is really good to take that friendship to the next level, genuine appreciation. When giving feedback, I have this example here, and this kind of ties in. So you could say, like, that was wrong. This is how you do it right. Imagine getting that feedback. Even if I say it in a positive tone, the first thing I'm saying is that was wrong. You might hear it and think logically, okay, that's feedback, that's fine. But think about how much more effective this next example is. That was good. Here's how it could be even better. If it wasn't good, oh, thank you for doing that, but this is how we can do it better. Start with appreciation. Start with something positive, because then the feedback inspires, influences the person, and it inspires them to do better. So these are small things that are very strategic and tactical. And bottom line, it's good. It makes people feel good. It makes you feel good. And the more that you do it, you'll notice that it really does inspire genuine results. Okay, so for chapter 3, arouse in the other person an eager want. And what this chapter really focuses on is understanding what the other person wants. Okay, so what this does is you take it out of the me and think about the you, or them, or we, or however you want to phrase it. What do they want? Now, this could be like in the chapter, they talked about parenting again. I think parenting is one of the best examples because it really simplifies things and we don't have the preconceived notion of what an adult should expect. So because it's a child, it frees us to think differently. And I think for this chapter, correct me if I'm wrong, or I think one of the stories was that they're trying to motivate their child to want to go to school, and he just didn't want to. And so they talked about a strategy where they were like, okay, you can force a child to go to school, obviously, but the impact that it has when you get the other person to want to do it is so much better. So yes, as a leader, as whatever position you're in, you can force people to do things. But this book is about influence. It's about managing, handling. It's about persuasion. And this is a really wonderful way it's what sets big time leaders apart. Because if you force people to do stuff, whether it's your kids or your company employees or your team, you can only get so far. When you motivate people to want to do things and to want to do things better, that has what we call a ripple effect that will impact other ways that they're acting. Okay, so as I said before, so this is awesome for personal relationships, for parenting, for business, for colleagues, for clients, marketing, advertising. If you have a business where you're selling stuff, and here's the best one for you, because we're going to apply this for business. This is also how you sell yourself. And I don't mean prostitution. I mean, in terms of business, those of you who have LinkedIn. And the reason I say this is because when I was reading this chapter, yes, it's about communicating, but one of the things I thought for you is this is an awesome approach for how you can use LinkedIn. I find that a lot of people get overwhelmed and they don't know how to strategically use LinkedIn. And LinkedIn can be an amazing resource to grow your network, to get new jobs, and just to establish yourself as an expert in your field. So what you want to think about is not me, not I have 20 years of experience, I have 17 degrees, I know 4 languages. That's wonderful, but that's kind of what your resume and CV are for. For your online presence, for your LinkedIn, it's really helpful. And I'll try to make videos in the future about how to set up your page for if you don't have one. But the mindset is you want to show what do they want. So in your field, whatever your position is, how are you helping people solve their problems? People don't want to know that you have 10 years of experience, but they do want to know that if they can't get enough traffic to their website, that you can help them drive traffic to the page that they need. So do you see the difference? The first one is just me, 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 me. I have this much experience. The second one is really think about what problems you're solving in your field. And so that'll help you with your profile, with how you frame your experience, and inspire you to post more. But definitely I would recommend to get a LinkedIn profile if your goal is to at some point get a new job, if your goal is to grow your network. I mean, especially now, right? We're all, not all, but a lot of us are still dealing with COVID and having to be at home. So networking in person is challenging, but LinkedIn, you can network globally and virtually. Just a thought. Okay, so now back to chapter 3. So other things that you can apply. Something that if you read this chapter and you instinctually got defensive, I think it's probably because some people mistake this for manipulation. Some people think that this kind of strategy, you're just manipulating people to get your way. And they were very clear, and I'm so grateful, which is what makes me appreciate this book, that they were like, no, this is not about manipulating people. This is about effectively inspiring action. And I think the story here was, for example, he was going to have some kind of meeting in a hotel, and the hotel raised their rates, even though he already had the reservation, and he couldn't afford to pay more. So what he did, instead of going to the hotel representative and saying, you know, I'm only paying this rate, I can't afford more, I did this reservation before you had the rate change, that wouldn't have gotten him anything. He flipped it and he said, okay, you want this to be booked. Yes, you can give it to other people. However, if you allow me to keep this reservation at the original rate, you'll have this booked for those days. I'm going to attract the people that are coming to see me at this meeting are the kind of people that you want to, you know, promote your services to, so it will be beneficial for you in the long run. That's what we're talking about. It's getting out of the me and understanding the you, what the other person needs, ultimately, so you can get what you want. Absolutely. Like bait the hook. Oh my gosh, I can't read today. Bait the hook to suit the fish. You know, you're not going to get the fish with just a hook. You have to bait it with a delicious worm, or however fishing works, and understand the psychology behind persuasion. And as much as you instinctually might want to do confrontation and me and how you've wronged me, you can do it. But the point of this book is highlighting that that's not the most effective way. And honestly, if you're coming from a point where you want to be a positive communicator, where you want to motivate people, where you want to have genuine friendships, this is also more empathetic. It's a really nice approach. Highly recommend it. Now, my final thing for you is what I like about this book is it practices what it preaches. And what I mean by that is notice the structure of the book. The first 2 chapters before part 1, like the introductory chapters, I actually didn't like them. And that's the reason why I've started this book in the past, but I never kept going. I got really bored with the first ones of like how to read this book better and whatever the other preface is. But thanks to you and joining this book club with me, I was able to push through. And once you get to the meat and potatoes, the main part, chapters 1, 2, and 3, it was so good. And what I want you to notice is that they use the same strategy that they're promoting. Notice how it talks about you. What are your problems? What are your pain points? What do you need? What do you want? Then it tells you how you can do it. And then it gives you stories that show you how you can apply this in different settings. So I want you to, like, you're feeling the psychological benefit of what they're saying, and it feels good. So at the end of the day, you're going to make people feel good, and you're going to help yourself get what you need out of relationships when that's necessary, and just how to be a better person. To communicate effectively means that people will see your best self, and will understand what your needs are, and will understand what your message is. So that's why I never finished reading this book before, because the first two sections, I just was like, if this is what the whole book is like. And that's a good thing for you to know. How you start your communication, your presentation, your conversations is so important, because if you start in an engaging way, people will want to keep listening to you, right? So luckily with this book, there were so many other 30 million other people that have read it that I felt like, okay, I'll keep going. And I'm so glad that we did. But this is also a good thing for you. Be interesting from the start. It takes practice and you can totally do it. All right, so in the comments, let me know if you have a LinkedIn profile. If you want to share the link with me, or I'll put my link for my profile in there if you want to take a look at mine, or follow me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect on the professional side. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Next week on Thursday, we'll meet again and we'll talk about part 2.